Hello, everybody, and welcome to Common Censored. I'm Lee Camp, joined as always by Eleanor Goldfield.
Hello.
And this is the show where we talk censored stories and people, sensible solutions, and common ground movements to fight and build.
And sometimes other stuff.
And we're not going to get to the other stuff today because this is going to be an abbreviated episode. We do apologize, but we've got both scheduling problems and tech issues here in Los Angeles.
And personal, emotional, and mental issues. A lot of shit going on.
But those don't force us to have shorter
That's
episodes.
True.
Those actually, we bring those to the table
right.
to have longer episodes.
You guys, you don't even realize that you are our psychiatrists. You have no idea.
And we yours. It's a symbiotic, destructive, codependent relationship. We're out here in Los Angeles. We just did a show last night. Thank you to all of you who came out. Thank you to Jimmy Dore for doing a guest spot there. And I'm headed to Ventura tomorrow night. But sorry for the abbreviated episode. We will come to you with a full-length episode next week. But let's get started since we only have a limited amount of time. Let's dive into our hugely in-depth, remarkably detailed analysis of the Democratic debate the other night. And moving on.
Yeah, that's basically it. So we should preface this by saying that neither Lee nor myself watched the debate.
I saw a clip or two.
Because...
we value our sanity.
Yes. Actually, Jimmy Dore had a joke yesterday basically saying, so I was watching The View because I have that kind of time. And it reminded me of oh yeah, that's how I feel about the debates. It's I'm watching the debates because I have that kind of time and I am a masochist.
But we have done one could argue, lazier or smarter thing and read some analysis of it. One analysis by Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, which... You can get some of the details of that.
They always do great work in analyzing how corporate media deals with issues, and so their debate analyses have always been spot on. I've found, but basically the first issue is that climate change or climate chaos or climate justice got basically no play at all. And this is also after the climate debate was struck down. That idea was struck down, and then the day of the debate, Greenpeace did an action in the same city that the debates were being held in Houston, and even still, it's climate.
Well, I think none of them want to talk about the climate unless they're forced to. And then if they're forced to, they'll say the things that they think need to be said for them to remain a viable candidate.
Well, and one of the questions wasn't even a policy question. It was Jorge Ramos asked Cory Booker, who's a vegan, asked whether more Americans should follow his diet. It's not a fucking policy question.
Well,
and it's like a Tinder question.
And I'm sure, without having even seen Cory Booker's response, I'm sure his response was, no, meat eaters love me. Please, meat eaters, please vote for me.
Yeah, he didn't take that moment to double down on
down on veganism.
Meat eaters are fucking assholes, and I hope they all die.
Surprisingly, that was not his take. But yeah, it'd be, and okay, so I guess the other than just mocking him, the question would be, what would we like to see with someone confronted with that question? And it's you could spend the time being no, I don't think this diet's right for everybody, but here are all the reasons meat, endless and kind of unfettered meat consumption torture farming, but is destroying our environment and the fucking pig shit lagoons. Like I've said, that was also Paul Ryan's nickname in high school. But pig shit lagoons just fucking everywhere, and those things then get flooded and end up in our rivers, and delish. Let's just say delish.
Delish. So climate was an afterthought at best. The other thing, of course, is that the debates, just like any other debates previously, are framed in an incredibly hawkish manner. So, for instance, the question was posed, many of you on the stage have said that you'd bring troops home in your first term from Afghanistan, or your first year. And then he asked, Senator David Moore asked Elizabeth Warren, would you keep that promise to bring the troops home starting right now with no deal with the Taliban? How could you bring troops out of Afghanistan if we haven't struck a deal with the Taliban, you monster?
Well, I love it as if we just own Afghanistan. Like, that's our country, and, you know, if they want to, if this Taliban so-called wants to be involved in the governing of it, then, you know, they need to do right by us because that's our country over there. My joke on Redacted tonight was that the fact that we've gone over there, fucking destroyed their country in a million different ways, and now want them to make a deal with us, it's like a guy came to your house, trashed the whole place, pissed in your exotic fish tank, shat on your couch, and then you said, get out. And he said, well, what are you going to do for me?
Basically. And this is also with, like, speaking of how it's framed, they keep calling it a premature
ejaculation.
That's almost as bad as what's been going on in Afghanistan. No, but
wow, you're really harsh on the guy.
Premature withdrawal, which I guess is
the same idea. Same idea.
Premature withdrawal from Afghanistan, and it's like, how can it be a premature withdrawal if we've been there for, by the time any of these guys would be president, for 19 years?
Premature withdrawal.
Not, I mean, what the fuck? That makes no sense. Like, so the entire idea of this being like, oh, we're going to leave too soon, and what if it gets messed up after we leave? And it's like, have you seen it recently? Like, us being there is what messed it up. It's what continues to mess it up. There's no way that our leaving, regardless of how we left, we could leave in any kind of fucked up manner, and they'd still be better off.
It's like extracting a tick and then being like, I think that was premature. I think we shouldn't have taken that tick out just yet.
So the other, just real quick.
Yeah, last point on the debates.
Yeah. So the other, God, cracking the whip today. So the other thing was,
I just don't feel they deserve much of our time.
No, I know. But a lot of people are talking about the red baiting, particularly with regards to the question being posed to Sanders as to why he wasn't calling Nicolas Maduro a dictator, and then.
But he did, didn't he?
Sanders, I think he called him a tyrant. And that, you know, talking about how China is the biggest serious national security threat to our country. And then, of course, the other point that was made is that women's issues were not discussed at all. So there were no questions with regards to women's rights or anything to do with unequal pay or the threats against reproductive rights that continue to ramp up in this country. So there was a lot of shit that was missing, from climate to women's issues, and of course a lot of focus on how we could just be more hawkish, because I don't think we're bombing enough.
There's so much McCarthyism and red baiting that it's gotten to the point that even one of Biden's eyes turned red.
Dude,
they're just seeing red everywhere.
If that's not some sort of like existential, like Star Wars type evil empire shit, I don't know what. I mean,
for those of you who are unaware, apparently a blood vessel burst in Biden's eye while he was in the middle of the debate.
Which,
so
isn't that like some cartoon shit? Like the bad guy
has
so
red
angry,
eyes,
and then his eyes are bloodshot. Like that is some straight up
right. Yeah, it's both disgusting, and I think it just shows that these people fear the Red Menace. They really do. See it everywhere.
Speaking of the Red Menace, do you want to hop on over to Cuba?
Hop on over to the other Red Menace. So our next story is about USAID. For those of you unfamiliar with USAID, it's one of these kind of soft power organizations that we use. We pretend they're there to help countries, and we send them in, and their main goal is kind of to foster a coup attempt or to foster disruption, to slowly undermine whatever government is we're trying to topple. And so they're kind of a fake aid organization that is connected to our government. And so USAID is now offering $3 million to any group or organization that's able to successfully smear Cuban doctors. Now, again, some of you may not know that the Cuban doctors are some of the best in the world, and their medical care for a relatively poor country compared to us or China or something. Their medical care is very impressive, and these doctors are
a lot because it's had to be because of our blockade that's been on them for decades has forced them to basically take care of themselves because they don't have access to a lot of medicines that would be available to them were we not totally fucking with their entire economy.
Right. And so their doctors are also the kind of the known internationally to be cooperative with other nations, to go in and help other nations. And this is many nations. These are nations that are fairly wealthy, like many of them were in Brazil. And I think they were being kicked out by Jair Bolsonaro.
Well, and a lot of them also come to the U.S. to train doctors here, apparently.
Really?
Yeah, Netfa Freeman was telling me that.
Probably during those years when Obama decreased the embargo.
And Netfa Freeman, who does a lot of work particularly with Afro-Cuban and those sort of issues, was telling me this, and he said that the only payment, quote unquote, that they want for it is that they never use it for profit. Which is astonishing.
And we're like, does not compute.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Not used for.
And actually, Lee, you and I were in Cuba and met some doctors that had gone to Africa during the Ebola outbreak there a few years ago to help.
So Cuba was I think the number one country that sent doctors to help during the Ebola outbreak. You remember we sent like 4 doctors and then everyone flipped the fuck out and put them under quarantine the moment they got back, even though if you took the proper health precautions, like it was the odds you were bringing Ebola back into New Jersey are like zero. But
we basically we condemned them for helping.
For giving a shit about other countries. So anyway, the point we're getting at is these doctors are well known internationally to do a lot of great international work and aid and everything. And the U.S. doesn't like this because we're now back in the business. Now that the Trump administration has reversed the kind of softening of tensions, we're back in the business of how can we crush Cuba, and they don't like that one of the kind of successes that Cuba has is these doctors. And so now our so-called aid agency, USAID, is offering to pay people to how can you malign these doctors? How can you make them look bad internationally so that Cuba doesn't have this kind of chip that they can play where they say, look at how great our doctors are.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely absurd. Another point was that Cuba has a lung cancer vaccine.
Yeah.
And there was an article about this actually in USA Today in 2018 that basically says Cuba has a lung cancer vaccine and many U.S. patients can't get it without breaking the law because of the blockade. So that means that literally like they're making strides and towards new and important medical discoveries. And still, not only are we not allowing that information or that medicine to go across these borders, but we're actively trying to condemn these doctors for coming up with shit that saves lives.
Yeah, and I've always said that these Americans that are trying to sneak down to Cuba to get this lung cancer vaccine so that they can live apparently a little longer and maybe survive lung cancer, it's just not patriotic. And these people need to do the patriotic thing and die.
For America.
Yeah, die for America. Wear a little red, white, and blue foam #1 hand and kick it for America.
Literally, kick the bucket.
That's what I've always said. It is incredible that that they have medications that they're willing to share, but we're like, fuck you. We're not doing business with Cuba with all of your life-saving stuff.
And this wasn't, I don't know if it was doctors as well, but I remember after Katrina, because Louisiana is like right next to Cuba, if you look at a map, really close. Cuba offered to help New Orleans after Katrina hit New Orleans, and the U.S. was like, no, we don't, no, fuck you, no. Yeah. And so, of course, Cuba just kind of shrugged their shoulders, and they're like, all right, I mean, I guess, fuck us then.
Yeah.
And of course, we all know what happened during Katrina, which is or after the devastation and the people that were left literally to die and in en masse. And we definitely could have used some fucking help. But
yeah. Well, I mean, and of course, the deeper irony of this is it's not that we're incapable of helping the people in Louisiana. It's that we're not willing to put the money into the right places to actually save poor people that are dying from the crisis of climate change. And so it's like it's kind of like us being like, no, we made a choice not to help these people because they're fucking poor and we don't give a shit to put money into that. So you can't go help them. We're teaching them a lesson, okay, about
threat of the
poverty.
good example.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get to our last story here.
Yes, so this story is about it's one of the many stories about the upcoming climate strike that's happening September 20th all over the world, really. So this is about Amazon employees who are walking out over the company's inaction regarding climate change. And it's the first time in Amazon's 25-year history where workers at the company's Seattle headquarters are participating in a strike. Some 900 Amazon employees signed an internal petition pledging to walk out at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time on September 20th over the fact that Amazon has done absolutely nothing with regards to climate change. And
they have, just to encourage it, to further it.
So basically, for folks not familiar, there's a global climate strike that's happening on September 20th, and people are being are asking that people walk off of school, their jobs, basically that everything stops with regards so that we can bring attention to climate chaos. And it's also in line with the United Nations Climate Action Summit, which is happening on September 23rd. And yeah, so this is it. I wanted to talk about this specific topic because it shows that important intersection between issues, the labor movement and climate change. And especially with regards to a large company, like a huge corporation like Amazon, it's really a big deal because these corporations, just like any other corporation, survive because of us workers. And when we start to recognize our power, we can bring something as ginormous as Amazon down. We can bring them down. And we should acknowledge that power. And another story that I recently saw with Amazon is that they're going to cut back on health benefits for their workers because, fuck you. And
they really did have it too good for too long. I mean, honestly, they've been riding that gravy train. Fucking Amazon employees. Oh God, they just sit there all day long, working their asses off till they collapse.
I think it might have been Whole Foods specifically, but either way, just the idea that the richest corporation in the fucking world would be like, you know what? I can't find the cash for your, lung transplant. But so this acknowledgement of our power.
Gotta go get that vaccine in Cuba.
Right? That acknowledgement of our power and that cross-section of issues so that this is not just a strike at Amazon saying, well, I want I want better pay or I want better healthcare, but it's like, no, I'm going on strike because you guys are fucking assholes and are doing nothing to mitigate climate chaos. And we as workers need to stand with the youth climate movement, but also just with the growing global climate movement and say that we have an important role to play because we are the global economy. And if we stop, it stops. And we need to be really looking at that very starkly right now because of the situation that we are up against with regards to climate chaos.
And it's not that Amazon created this problem, but of the way they function and the harm they're doing to our environment. But they're certainly one of the biggest nowadays. And the system is set up such that it makes sense for them and they can make a profit by shipping like a nothing product, a tiny little nothing product across the entire country. It's probably been made out of pieces that were shipped around the world. And it's just a completely unsustainable environmentally model, but it makes them a profit. And so they really are, one of the biggest factors. What percentage of emissions are from 71 factories and companies?
No, it's 70% of all global emissions are from 100 companies.
Right. And so, and I'm sure one of them is Amazon. And on top of that, Amazon destroys a unbelievable amount of their products. I don't know what the U.S. numbers are, but an investigation in France found that hundreds of thousands were destroyed in like 1 year. And it's because they don't want to ship them back to a storage facility. Certain things have gone unsold. They don't want to give them away because then that dilutes the value of the product. So they're not going to fucking give a flat screen TV to a guy in Kenya. It's like, fuck you. So they literally junk them or burn them or whatever. I mean, could you imagine the landfill and stuff where hundreds of thousands of products just being burned and crushed? And
it's absolutely absurd. And that's there's so many facets to big corporations like Amazon, to their environmental destructive practices, which of course just makes this all the more important. And why we've seen stuff like this in the past. Like Google employees went on strike because of Google's work with the war machine. So we're seeing more of this intersection of issues that are based on the recognition of our power as workers, and we need to see a lot more of this.
Yeah, because this is the one power we kind of will still have left is the power of our ability to work. Even as inequality gets so crushing, most of us are still working for companies that we can shift if we actually organize and work together as a unit rather than kind of being separated and atomized.
Oh, and just real quick, because there were 3 demands that were listed on this letter that the Amazon employees signed, this petition. One is that they want Amazon to stop donating to politicians and lobbying groups that deny the reality of climate change, which the fact that that's still a thing is still fucking mind-boggling.
Number 2 is better Playboys in the bathroom.
Wait, actual Playboys or?
I meant the magazine.
Oh, well, then I'm not interested. 2, to stop working with oil and gas companies to optimize fossil fuel extraction, and 3, to achieve zero carbon emissions by 2030. So those are their demands, and I mean, it'll be interesting to see what kind of follow through there is, because of course one of the things that's important is that we look at our tactics realistically and say that, okay, well, if it's one strike for a day, Amazon's going to look at that and be like, all right, we lose however many fucking millions of dollars that day, but whoop-de-doo, that's pocket change. So, okay, have your cute little strike and then whatever. So I think that we need to realize the efficacy of these tactics and really analyze them before we do them, but also after, of course, and see how we can make them better in the future and how we can keep this ball rolling so it's not just like, everybody fuck off on September 20th and then get back to work on the 21st.
Yeah, and something else we should note is the work of the organizers that probably set this thing up. Someone had to decide, let's see if we can get a bunch of workers to stand against this, and that's not an easy thing. So those organizers should be, given high fives. And
high fives all around.
And fist bumps. Okay, folks, that is our abbreviated episode this week. Thank you so much for joining us. If you feel like you got $1 worth out of this episode, please go over to patreon.com/Common Censored and join up over there. We won't have any extra content this week, but like I said, we'll be back with a full episode and extra content next week. I have web exclusive videos at youtube.com/Moment of Clarity show. That's the name of my other kind of web exclusive show, is Moment of Clarity. And you can find all of Eleanor's stuff at artkillingapathy.com. Text the word censored to 345-345 to get signed up to our email list for free. That's the word censored to 345-345. And live shows coming up in Madison, Milwaukee, Toronto, and others at leecamp.com.
And all of my stuff is available at artkillingapathy.com. So thank you. We'll be back with the full time next week. And until then, act out.
Keep fighting.